Okay, everyone, welcome to today's webinar on increasing client retention and building sticky clients. My name is Scott Kalanico with MSP Business Management. We've got that poll now. What I'm going to do is I'll share that poll with everyone here so you guys can take a look at that. Thank you for taking the time to vote in that. And that's the poll. Have you lost a customer you could possibly have salvaged? 75% of you said yes. 25% of you said no. And this might be of interest to my guest today, Mr. Gordon Tan from MSP Heartbeat. Howdy, Gordon.
How you going, Scott?
Okay. All right. What do you think about those poll answers there?
It's interesting. It's kind of in line with the data that we've been collecting as well, which is fantastic. And it does show that there's opportunities for MSPs to kind of look to improve their client retention and ultimately improve the profitability of their business. So it's very interesting.
Okay, excellent. I'll have to go ahead and let me close that poll, and I'm going to turn things over to you, Gordon. Before we get going, I will say let me say some housekeeping things. First of all, and this is in case you're wondering, this is the #1 question we do get asked during the webinar, is that yes, we are recording this. The webinar is being recorded. It will be online at the MSP Business Management website, hopefully on Friday is what I'll plan to do. You'll get an email from the GoToMeeting software that will give you the email address or give you the URL where you can go watch that. And we'll have also an MP3, and then it'll also go up on our iTunes channel. And so also, we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this. We're going to say about 10-15 minutes at the end. So if you'll go ahead and type your questions into me, and I'll get them over to Gordon. And even if we don't have time enough for them all, I'll send him the questions, and he can kind of go through those and get back to them when he's got the chance. So here's where you can ask questions down here. There you go. You can see that in your interface. So feel free. That kind of keeps things interactive. And I'm in Scotland, actually, so sometimes there are bagpipe players outside my window. So I'm going to go on mute and let Gordon take things away here. And Gordon, you all set there?
I am. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and take it away.
Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me a little bit of time to have a bit of a chat with you about how to increase retention and build sticky clients. Just a really short bit of background on myself. I'm the founder of an MSP based in Brisbane, Australia. We started about 8 years ago, and we're still a small business, so we've got about 25 staff at the moment. And out of that business, we developed a product called Client Heartbeat, which is basically a customer satisfaction tool built specifically for managed services companies. And it was really out of our MSP that tool was developed. And what it's allowed us to do is build really strong relationships and get a lot of insight into how MSPs are improving their client retention and really starting to talk to some of the best in class and the top performing MSPs to kind of get a bit of knowledge about what they're doing differently to the rest of, to your typical managed service or IT service provider. So to just go through and talk about the agenda really quickly for today, again, feel free to at any point kind of throw some questions up. More than happy to kind of try to answer those. I know Scott's monitoring the chat, so feel free. In terms of the agenda, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about really 5 key areas. The first of which is, how are we going to identify unhappy clients? And we've got a few different mechanisms to allow you to do that. The second is, once you've identified them, how are you going to stop them from defecting? Third, strategies to increase client retention overall, MSP service benchmarks. So we'll show you what the averages are for the industry, as well as what the top performers are getting across 4 key kind of service benchmarks. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about how my own personal experience with implementing some of the stuff within our MSP and what the results have been and how we went about it, and hopefully give you guys some insight there as well. So the first thing we're going to do before we get started is really talk about just in terms of customer satisfaction as a whole, how do you kind of define customer satisfaction? So there was actually an organization called Gallup that has been around for quite a while. Some of you might be familiar with the organization. They surveyed 1 million small businesses. So that's a significant amount of small businesses. And what they did was they came up with results, and the results they presented back, in their words, they said it was eerily similar how related these questions or how applicable these questions are across a wide variety of service businesses. And this is actually the same case in managed services. And those questions, those key categories are accuracy, availability, partnership, and advice. So to look at this and explain it in a little bit more detail, accuracy and availability are what define whether you're delivering an appropriate level of service to your customer. Accuracy being attention to detail, which we're all familiar with in our industry, and availability is actually response times. Them getting what they need in a timely fashion. So the easy way to kind of talk about it is it's getting what they want when they want it, and that really forms the basis of keeping a customer satisfied. If you can deliver on accuracy and availability, your customer would be satisfied with your service. Now, if you want to go to that next step and create an advocate within your business, you need to focus on two other key areas, and those key areas are partnership and advice. Partnership being a feeling of working together as one organization, and advice being helping your client learn and obviously educating them along the journey. Now, what's really interesting about these four factors is that you cannot create an advocate and look to improve partnership and advice without first having bedded down accuracy and availability. So you can't transition on to questions 3 and 4 if you haven't fixed 1 and 2. And that's something that's been really apparent in the data that we've been looking at on our side of the fence as well. So that's how you can effectively define customer satisfaction within your organization. You don't need more than those questions to ask to really get a key snapshot of exactly how your organization is performing. Now, how much does it cost? So one of the big things, one of the really interesting things that we've found over our time is that IT companies, managed service companies, sometimes fail to maybe understand the gravity of just losing a single $1,500 contract a month over 4 years and how much revenue that results in losing over that time. And if you do the numbers yourself, if you lose only one $1,500 contract a month a year for 4 years, you'll end up losing $180,000 in revenue over those 4 years. And what we also know from the data that we've collected is that a typical MSP, now you might be on either end of that spectrum, currently has about 12% of their clients that are not satisfied. Not satisfied actually being, they may not be actively looking for a new company, but they're not satisfied with the service. So they would be, as we would say, open to competitive offers, which is a really, really interesting statistic that we've found. So, moving into how you would then identify these unhappy clients. Well, before you can really look to improve client retention, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify which clients are unhappy and then find out why they're unhappy. And you also need to look at establishing a baseline for your service so you can see if you're improving or not. And in terms of our recommendations, we've got some recommendations that we've found are pretty effective in terms of delivering the results that you're gonna want. Now, I'll go through these, and again, feel free to ask any questions if you don't understand or you're not familiar with any of these. But the first is obviously your regular on-site IT meetings. So they're called quarterly business reviews, or you might have some other name, strategic ICT reviews with your clients. But using those meetings to drive the identification of unhappy clients is key. It's really interesting to kind of see that some organizations still don't do these quarterly business reviews, or maybe biannual business reviews. They're something that's really, really important in the ongoing development of that relationship that you have with the client. But more and more people these days are adopting that into their managed services style and building those costs in, which I think is great. Obviously, most of us are running some sort of PSA tool, be it ConnectWise, Autotask, TigerPaw. There's a variety of different products out there, and most of us have the opportunity to use a ticket closing survey. So what I mean by that is, you log a ticket for the customer. When the ticket's completed, it sends an automatic notification saying, thank you very much, the ticket's now closed. And at the bottom, there's a little link that says, look, give us your feedback. And your client can click that link and provide you with some sort of feedback, which then flows back into ConnectWise or Autotask or the relevant PSA platform. Now, the interesting challenge that you'll have, and this is consistent across the board with these ticket closing surveys, is that you'll get a very, very low percentage of participation. And it makes sense, if you think about how that's working in the eyes of the customer, maybe they fill the first one out because, obviously it's new, and maybe they fill the second one out. But after about the 8th or 9th one, they're really not going to give it any more priority. They're just going to kind of move on with their day. And so they do become less effective over time, but what you'll find is you'll get an overwhelming amount of just people saying thank you to you, which is interesting. So, you'll get a significant amount of people that are just happy that the problem's fixed and wanting to, give something back. And basically, they will say thank you, and then you'll get the occasional one that will give you some constructive feedback. And it's up to you to utilize that feedback, and it'll be, 1 out of every maybe 20 or 15 or 20 of the surveys that you get back. But, that's definitely feedback that you can use to identify unhappy clients. The other thing that you can do is to actually, and this is something obviously that's part of Client Heartbeat, but that's not to say you need to use Client Heartbeat to do it, is to create a quarterly customer feedback survey. So it doesn't need to be a long survey. It just needs to be based on the questions that we've already talked about: accuracy, availability, partnership, and advice. And you want to be asking for, a 1 to 10 rating for each of those, because you want it to be a quantifiable number so that you can trend and track those results over time. Now, you can do that just as, for free with SurveyMonkey. You can go to the SurveyMonkey. Scott will probably pop the link up there for you, but you can go to SurveyMonkey. You can sign up for free. You can create your survey. You can put the 4 questions on there, and all you need to do is run that every quarter. And then you can start to correlate, did, Jim's air conditioning, did his scores go up or down from the previous period? That's a really good indicator as to, whether a customer is becoming increasingly unhappy or increasingly satisfied, for that matter, with your services. Finally, and this is an interesting one, this is something that we've talked about in the past. We do, some regular videos, and what we've found when we actually ask some clients.
Okay, everyone, looks like we might have just lost Gordon there for just a little bit. We'll give him some time to kind of... You back there, Gordon?
Hello. I am. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, take it away.
No worries. Sorry. So anyway, another interesting piece of information was, if the client's gone quiet, this particularly applies in scenarios where, let's say you've been having recurring issues with a client. We're all in the business of, IT support. So we all know that occasionally servers and, there's just going to be a glitch in the matrix, and sometimes 3 reboots are going to fix whatever the problem was. And, there's going to be some recurring issues there that are going to be, challenging to resolve. So, if you're constantly in debate with a client and then all of a sudden they go quiet, that's generally a fairly good indicator that they're actually kind of fed up and moving on, looking for other options. And that's based off feedback that we've had from other clients of Client Heartbeat, was that whole client going quiet element is something that could be a flag to identify an unhappy client. So there's some real simple ways that you can identify unhappy customers within your business, and you're not going to need to put too much additional time, additional investment into making that happen. You really just need to look at modifying your processes slightly to improve that. So once you've identified the client is unhappy, you need to implement a program that's going to stop them from defecting. Now, the most successful MSPs that we've worked with have formalized procedures for client win-back. So we all understand that this business that we're in, it's very difficult to maintain a consistently high level of service, all the time. There's always going to be situations whereby things just haven't worked out the way that we hope that they worked out, with all of our best intentions. And you need to have a structured process in place for how to deal with this stuff. Now, I wanted to run through a little bit about how we do it at R&G to give you a bit of insight into how that process might look or how you might be able to work a similar process within your organization. Now, I'm going to assume, along the way you're going to have instances where, it's not going to be an end of the road type of thing, but the client's going to be obviously, not happy with something, and you're going to be able to address that. But we're really talking about getting to that point where you're kind of on your last legs, for want of a better word, and the client, and that if you are at that point where you stuff up again, the chances are the client's going to walk. And it was interesting to see the poll, 75% of people say they'd known a client was concerned they could have salvaged that relationship, and the other 25%, well, perhaps they don't believe so. However, this process will go a long way to trying to alleviate some of those concerns. So when you're talking about winning back a client, you obviously, let's say we've identified this client through a survey process. It's important that you jump on the issue, obviously, straight away. Now, you call the client immediately and, arrange a face-to-face meeting. This stuff works significantly better if you can get in front of the person. Some of the feedback that we've had and some of the feedback that we've experienced at R&G is being able to address the issue face-to-face is it diffuses the situation a lot better than trying to address something over the phone or via email. It just doesn't have the same impact. The next thing that R&G does is we add them to a customer watch list. Now, what that basically is a very simple concept that we have. So we do a monthly company meeting. So at that company meeting, everyone comes together and we've got, marketing, sales, operations, service delivery, and everyone has their little piece and talks about their little piece. Customer Watch, all it is it's basically a construct that we've put together, and any customer that's put on Customer Watch, all it means is for the rest of our staff, they have to walk on absolute eggshells and deliver, an exceptional level of service to those clients. There's generally only one, maybe two. If we've had a rough patch with a client, which does happen, they'll go on Customer Watch. And all it is just to let our guys know, look, make sure you give 120% with this client. Now, we deliver a great service, but this is just trying to go over and above, putting everyone on the same page about warning them about where this customer's at. So we'll add the customer watch and then bring that up at the company meeting. We'll then organize a team meeting internally with the staff that are relevant for the account to discuss possible causes of issues. Now, most of the time we'll be able to at least flag some of the issues that, potentially the customers had. And we'll obviously then look to try to meet with the customer face-to-face. It's important that when we sit down to discuss these issues, we develop a series of solutions. So I'll go through an example next of this in a real-world example, but obviously it's important to have some solutions ready when you go in and meet with a customer. Now, that process, again, is face-to-face. And then, what we do is propose a customer win-back plan. In those situations, I think it's important, you're probably going to have to, if you want to keep the customer, you're probably going to have to make some concessions. It's very difficult to win back a customer and maintain, maintain all of the high ground, for want of a better word. But you still want it to be win-win, and I'll explain to you in the example coming up, how we've kind of done that to make that win-win. But, you don't want a lose-lose client. Those clients, you just want to get, you need to politely tell them that you're not the right provider for them. It has to be win-win. And something that, is feedback that we've got from other MSPs is often it's simply a communication issue. So the more communication that you can deliver to the client, the greater the customer intimacy and, the greater the customer retention. So communication and just keeping in regular contact with customers is often just the key. Finally, once you've kind of proposed this, plan of attack to the customer, you really are on your last legs. And so it's important to make sure that you're delivering on your promises. And the customer knows that if you stuff up again, they're going to go look somewhere else. They've given you another opportunity. So you just need to make sure that you're paranoid about delivering on your promises. So I'll talk about an example that we had in our business and tell you about how we went through that process. So we had a client. They were paying us about $4,200 a month, but they were a very demanding client by our standards. So, we generally try to accommodate clients the best we can. This client was the kind of client that, I'm sure we've all had a certain level of experience with clients like this. So as an example, some of the things that the client will want us to do is, and maybe this comes standard for some of our from some other MSPs, but it's not standard for us. Is reviewing each month, reviewing the internet data reports that are generated by the firewall. Now those reports get sent to the client, and the client obviously from our UTM device. But the client asks us, why we're not reviewing that each month. Similarly, why are we not reviewing the firewall logs each month? Things like that. Their change management procedures and their project management procedures, which is very, very demanding in comparison to our typical standards. Now, what we found was the client had given us a poor heartbeat score. So basically, we send out the heartbeat is basically sending out the survey with the 4 questions, and the scores dropped fairly significantly from one quarter to the next, and that was highlighted to our team. So our services manager called them straight away, added them to our customer watch list, and then we sat down and organized a team meeting with a TAM. TAM is our technical account manager. That's basically the senior engineer assigned to the account, as well as key management staff to discuss the possible issues. And the issues were actually highlighted as this. There are a couple of stuff-ups on our end. So fair enough, there were 2 issues there that, probably a little bit grey, but probably more on our side of the grey than the client's. There was an issue where we put in a new internet service, and we did testing on the internet service before it was cut over. So we tested the service and it was working. However, when we actually did the final cutover, what we found was that when we put a significant amount of throughput through the link, the performance was almost unbearable. And the client obviously raises an issue as, well, we obviously said, look, we did test it. And they said, well, in the past, what we've done is we've run a computer on that side of the network for, 3 weeks and done UAT testing that way. And look, that's fair enough. So, we obviously, those types of issues, fair enough, we're going to take those on the chin. Communication from the client was something that was raised internally from our team. So we were having serious communication problems with the client. We would send them, particular pieces of information, and they would not get back to us in an appropriate time frame. And then when the issue became more pressing, the client would then, flag this back to us and say, why haven't we initiated anything based on that? And so there was communication issues there. We felt that we weren't getting the responses we needed from the client. And finally, it was just more of the client was more demanding than a traditional. Sorry about that, guys. Just keep dropping out there. I'm not sure why, but I'll keep coming back. And yeah, finally, the client was a bit more demanding than a traditional client. So we felt we had to address that as well. Here's what we did. So we went and met the client on site. That was very, very important. So we went out face-to-face and had those discussions. We always, we're always looking for those win-win situations. We're very upfront with that with the client. So we simply explained our situation and the solution. So look, we accepted responsibility for the stuff-ups, and we were going to fix them for free. That's important. I think that's the concessions part we talked about earlier. We're not going to try to make money off our stuff-ups. And I don't think there's many organizations which will do that. So I think we're probably, most people are probably all on the same page there. For the communication issues, look, we came up with a solution of, well, obviously he's very, very busy. It's difficult for him to respond to email. What about if we just had a weekly phone call with a client? Every week we sit down, every Wednesday morning, and we have a 20-minute phone call, and we can just rattle off all the stuff that we need and give him an update on where everything's at, and he can go yes, no, yes, no. And the client agreed to that. And finally, we just basically explained to the customer, look, in terms of a typical customer for us, yes, you are quite a demanding customer. Now, we have the capability to be able to do what you need, but there's going to be some additional demands required from our team. And we're very confident that we can deliver, but ultimately, you're not going to be able to get that level of service for the price that you're currently paying. And so we proposed a small increase on the cost of the agreement to cover that. And ultimately, the client was actually quite happy with that. They're more concerned about the outcome than the extra, couple of $1,000 a month. And so the end result was the client ended up paying us a little bit more, and they were more happy with the outcome. So that's really win-win, you know. And if you go into a situation where, you know, the client is being a little bit, I wouldn't say unreasonable, but their demands are over and above what your service delivery model traditionally copes with, and they're not prepared to pay or take, you know, to kind of handle and accommodate that, then it's not really win-win. It's kind of win-lose. And in those situations, you know, you've really got to look for another solution as to how you're potentially going to work through that. Because you don't, if you have all win-lose relationships or lose-lose relationships, chances are you know your business is going to suffer as a result of that. So that was basically our experience, you know, customer win-back programs. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, strategies to improve client retention. The first thing that you should do is you should identify your baseline and work on improving accuracy and availability. We already looked at the model earlier from Gallup, and it's been echoed in the client heartbeat crowdsourced questions that we use. You need to address attention to detail and promptness first. Before you look at, you know, creating any level of partnership with your clients or whatever, do the survey. If you know, if you need to do it cost effectively, go to SurveyMonkey, set up the questions, send the survey out. You'll be surprised at the result, and then do it in 3 months' time after you've done some initiatives and see if you can improve that. We're going to give you the benchmarks towards the end of this presentation. So you're going to know, you know, what the benchmarks are, and you can work on improving them. We'll talk more about that benchmarking a bit later on. The second thing, and I'm a massive advocate of, you know, we do a fair bit of MSP education, and I'm always an advocate of charging more. So it's very, very difficult to deliver, you know, really good response times and give clients the resources that they deserve if you're charging them, you know, a rock bottom price. And unfortunately, that's the conundrum that a lot of MSPs and particularly smaller MSPs, I know that we had this problem as well when we were a bit smaller, just not charging enough to be able to warrant the amount of work and resources that we're going to need to effectively deliver service to the client. So you kind of get in that vicious cycle of not charging them enough, therefore you can't resource effectively. Your staff are then running around and all they're doing is firefighting. The client is then getting frustrated because all you're doing is firefighting, and maybe your response times are suffering, and so they leave anyway. And so there's a really strong business case for the fact that if you really want to improve your client retention, you should just increase your price. At least to start off with, you know, you may lose 1 or 2 customers, but I've done this exercise with probably 15 or 20 MSPs that we've worked with quite closely, and I can guarantee you if you spoke to any of them, they would tell you it was the outcome at the end of that was better than before they started. They may have lost a customer or 2, but they're making the same amount of money doing less work. And also they've reset that expectation level so that the new customers that they bring on board are at that higher price, and they're delivering better customer service across the board. It's reflected in all of the client heartbeat results that we have a look at. So charging more is something that I'd really encourage you to have a bit of a think about. Finally, you know, look, it's coming up to 2014. The year's gone by insanely quickly. But, you know, maybe it's time for a customer intimacy initiative, you know, in 2014. Maybe it's time to look at creating a specific strategic, you know, push to improve the level of, you know, customer intimacy you have. Now, a few ideas that have kind of been bubbling up that we've heard about. I mean, obviously, quarterly business reviews. If you're not doing them, please do them. It's super important to build customer intimacy. Another interesting one we heard of, we don't actually do this, but it was something that we heard of from another MSP who's actually best in class in terms of their results, their client heartbeat results, was something they call laptops and lunch. So what they do is they allow all the staff to bring their personal laptops in, and they put some pizzas on in the boardroom of their client, and then send a technician or 2 out for lunch. So all the staff can kind of just bring their laptops in. You know, your techs or whatever will go through and just do a bit of a cleanup, try to help them run a little bit faster. You know, the staff get a bit of pizza, and it's a good opportunity to interact with clients. Really cheap and effective way to just build that customer intimacy across, you know, different levels of the organization. We actually thought that was a great idea. Another one that was something that was raised by, I think it was Bob, or maybe it was Alistair from GFI at the GFI conference that we were recently at, which I thought was a fantastic idea, was the use of webcams. So, you know, these days we're in jeopardy of, you know, because we deliver so much stuff remotely, we're kind of in jeopardy of, you know, becoming a bit of a faceless corporation. You know, that's not what you want to build as much of a relationship with the customer as possible. Now, before, when everyone used to roll trucks around, it was pretty easy. Your tech would walk through and say hi to all the different people, and he would have a very strong relationship. Now, because we're delivering 90% of the stuff remotely with things like GFI and the different other solutions, remote management monitoring solutions out there, you can actually bring up a webcam in the remote support. Now, you can stick a webcam on every person's desk. What about if your guy, your service desk guy, or your engineer was to just turn the webcam on really quickly at the beginning of the TeamViewer session, just wave at the customer and say hello. That's building some face time. People are going to relate to that. It's going to improve customer intimacy. So that was something else that we thought was pretty good. And more regular feedback processes. It's amazing that the amount of people that we talk to that are just doing, a survey once a year or an ad hoc survey to gather feedback about their customers. Sometimes they think it's not efficient. Sometimes they think they know what their customers are thinking. But why wouldn't you put in a formalized process to get regular feedback? Because that's what the best-in-class companies are doing. And we think it's really, really important. More customer retention strategies. So this is really important. Culture is obviously very, very important when it comes to this stuff. And this was something that I observed when I was talking to some of these best-in-class managed service companies. They really have a customer-oriented culture. Now, in terms of culture, when we talk about culture, I like to use the terminology of social control. So it's really just sets of information that you've kind of sent to your guys to determine, what behaviors they should be exhibiting in the absence of a proper procedure. Because let's face it, it's very difficult to proceduralize to the nth degree a managed services or an IT services business. So they need to know what to do. They need to be told by these sets of information what to do in appropriate situations without, where procedures don't exist. So here's a very short list of a way to gain that customer service culture. It does need to come from the top, so you do need to get management buy-in. It starts with values. So, I always thought the values thing was a little bit of a guff, something that everyone talked about, and culture was something that everyone talked about. But I really started to understand, more recently that some of, the guys that are outperforming the rest really have this ingrained into their DNA. And one of the really interesting things that one of the MSPs told me was, and I thought this was really poignant, was, you've already got a culture within your business. It's just managed or it's unmanaged. And that's very, very true. So, you need to define the values of the organization. You need to then align incentives. A lot of people's incentives are actually not aligned with what their values, and that's dangerous. You need to make at least one or two symbolic changes. Symbolic changes meaning things that stick out, that are obviously, they don't need to be massive changes, but they need to be symbolic of the changes that are going on within the organization. You need to obviously talk about the values that you have in the organization until you're bored. That was something that someone said to me was, obviously until you can't deal with talking about it anymore. And you need to hire and fire against that cultural fit. You need to look at those values, and when you're bringing someone on, say, is this person, truly, fit our company values? If they don't take that exception because you're really busy. Look for those right people, the right fit. And finally, it's celebration. So, if people are exhibiting these values that you want, reward them, celebrate those values. That's how you're going to start to build a customer, centric culture within your organization. A few more really simple client retention tips. Obviously, it's about stickiness. Stickiness can be created through layering products together. So I'll tell you a quick story. We had I told the story at the GFI Australia conference, but we had a client who, well, not a client, sorry, a potential client that we were tendering for. We went in and we actually did the whole tender response. We pitched them, and they called one day and basically said, look, thank you very much. You guys did the best tender response. You guys did the best presentation. You guys had the best price, but we're going with the competitor. And so at that point, we were kind of like, okay, well, why was that? And they were like, because it's too difficult to move. So we're going with the incumbent because they've got all the WAN links. It's going to be too much of a nightmare to move on. I think it was about a $10,000 or $11,000 a month opportunity. That's stickiness. That's that's something that you need to build within your organization to protect yourself. Stickiness, layering products, building offerings that are, multi-channel, so that it's difficult for your customer to switch. It's definitely not something that's a negative thing. It's definitely a positive thing for you and the customer. You've got to be their expert IT advisor, obviously. You've got to be prepared to lose clients. Now, how this ties into client retention, if you're cutting clients, is that it's going to free you up. We all know what a lose-lose client looks like. I don't need to spend a lot of time talking to you about it because as soon as I say lose-lose, a client probably pops in your head right now. It's the client that's always angry. It's the client that's always disputing their bills. Generally, they're paying late. It's the one that's creating a lot of stress for your organization. I can guarantee you if you were to cut that client after you finished this webinar today, you wouldn't email me and tell me that you regretted it in 3 months' time. Cut those lose-lose clients, and it's going to free you up to improve the client retention for the clients that are actually going to deliver you on those win-win outcomes. Set better expectations early. So during the onboarding process is obviously important. The better and the more clear you are, Ross is a big advocate in this. Ross is our client happy marketing manager. But the clearer you are at the beginning, the less surprises they're going to have later on. Show that you care by remembering special occasions and really have a regular service improvement focus. So, do you have a quarterly kind of service review process internally where you take the results that you've got from your survey, bring the team together, and then look at how you can actually drive initiatives and improve that, and then see if those improvements actually generate a positive influence on your scores. That's really important to increasing client retention. So that's kind of the client retention piece. Now we're going to move on to service benchmarks. Why this is important, sometimes we have conversations with people that say, look, I don't care about what my competitors are doing, and I understand that. It makes total sense. You should focus on your business and improving your business from one step to the next. However, what I would say about benchmarking is that benchmarking is actually the most effective way at finding the best bang for your buck for the resources that you're going to invest. Now let me explain what I mean by this. So it's incrementally harder for you to get, let's say we're talking about response times. It's significantly harder for you to get from the industry average to the best-in-class level than it is to get from below the industry average to the industry average. So it's about determining where you should invest your time, because getting the last 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3 to best-in-class level is going to cost a lot more resources. So if you can actually benchmark your performance against, say, those 4 key areas, and you see attention to detail is well below the industry average, the chances are that it's going to be really easy for you to actually affect that and fix that for a minimal resource investment. And that's why I think benchmarking is really important. Ross actually pulled up one of these facts a little while ago. Now, there was a study by the Dunvegan Group, which actually shows that 9% of your clients will leave simply because they perceive a competitor offering to be better. Our data shows the same, if not more. So it's not these days acceptable to be delivering just on accuracy and availability, because there's the perception in the market that someone else's offering is going to be better than yours. And so that's why benchmarking is really important. And finally, benchmarking is important because if you can get to that best-in-class level, it's going to create enormous value for the business, for your business. And that's obviously what we're all looking for. So here's some numbers for you if you're interested. So the best-in-class companies, using Client Heartbeat anyway, is about 400 at the moment, have about 70% better retention. So we obviously we can see if they're losing customers or they're maintaining customers. So they have about 70% better retention than an average MSP. They're growing on average at about 30% per annum. They're getting more referrals, and ultimately, and this is a deduction, they can charge higher prices for their services, which means it's completely a win-win outcome to be trying to chase that best-in-class level. So here's the benchmarks for you. Again, this will be something that you can, I'm sure, have a look at a bit later on. I'm sure Scott will make this webinar available, so you don't need to rush and write them all down now. On the left here, we've got the benchmarks. This is across all MSPs. So we actually segment by size of MSP within Client Heartbeat, but this is across the board. So this is comparing, some of our largest clients to, our one-man bands that we've got using the system. So you can see the scores there. You can also see the green represents the best in class. What the average of the top 15% are getting is in green. So when you do your new survey that you're going to do, through SurveyMonkey or whatever, and create these questions, compare your results to what you're looking at here, and it'll give you a really good indicator as to where you should invest your resources first anyway, as a priority. Final thing that we wanted to touch on was just, Ross thought it would be really, interesting to tell you a little bit about how it's affected our business, our managed services business. So as of last quarter, R&G finally reached a best-in-class satisfaction level for a company of our size in Australia. It took us 12 months to get there. So it was 4 quarters of stuff that we needed to do to get there. We didn't start, we started, I think we were always above the industry average, but to get the best-in-class level took us about 12 months. As part of that, whether, it's not directly related, but it's part of, it is definitely, there's definitely influence from this retention. It's that our total revenue increased by about 25%, and our monthly recurring revenue, which is our managed services, increased by about 40% over that period. And I know for a fact that we're now able to charge more, and we're definitely more profitable as a result of getting to that level. So, in terms of how we actually went about this process and how we actually did that, well, obviously the first thing we did was we implemented Client Heartbeat to get that baseline. We needed to know where we were at before we could start making improvements. We went through the process of increasing our prices. We've done it a number of times, but we went through that process again. We cut customers where it was lose-lose. There's clear lose-lose relationships. We basically bit the bullet and said, okay, this is not working for either party. They're not happy, we're not happy. Let's just politely give them to someone else. We did a big cultural initiative based around, the information that we supplied in the previous slide. Went through that process, talked about as a team about what it meant, for us, what we stood for, what our values were. I'm not sure if any people were at the IT Nation conference this year, but Simon Sinek, who was the guest speaker, talked about why you do what you do. I think it's really important. It gives people a reason to get invested in your culture and your company. We implemented a customer intimacy initiative similar to what we talked about. Had varying bits and pieces on it. It wasn't one clear specific initiative. And we also had quarterly heartbeat meetings. So what this basically was every time we did the survey, we then took those results and we had what we call a client heartbeat meeting. We all sat down as a group. Our services manager pulled it up on the board and said, okay, this is where we're at. What are we going to do? Our attention to detail is improving, but we need to get it to here. Get the team to contribute. Then they know best. They know how to improve attention to detail. It's probably things like documentation, procedures, checklists, stuff like that. So we went through that process. We did the initiatives, and every 3 months we reviewed it after the results were in. And that's how we ultimately got to that best-in-class level. So to just kind of finally touch very quickly on Client Heartbeat. Now, I should be clear and say that you don't need to use, this isn't obviously about Client Heartbeat. You don't need to use Client Heartbeat. Client Heartbeat is just really an effective way of putting it on autopilot. So it's just a process that takes 20 minutes, and then you can kind of get on with the actual improvement instead of worrying about how to get it all together. So it's basically about gathering client feedback, and we present it back to you in a really pretty looking dashboard that shows all the benchmarking, shows all the customers at risk based on some algorithms that we've developed, shows the scores and how they're improving and dropping and that kind of thing. So currently it's being used by over 400 managed service providers across the US, Australia, UK, and integrates with ConnectWise and Autotask. So you can definitely sync it, and it'll automatically bring across the customer information it needs and whatnot as well. It's basically a survey tool. Now we get about 60% response rates, and that's because it has an automated follow-up email system, so you don't need to worry. Again, it's all on autopilot. So we'll send a survey, and then it'll automatically send a follow-up email to the client. You can turn them on and off, those reminders. And because the survey's short, and you're going to follow our survey, kind of template, you'll get a better response. Now, if you're using SurveyMonkey, you'll still get a good response because you've got a short survey. Ultimately, it's just a simple tool that allows you to kind of do everything that we talked about today. Identify unhappy clients, improve your customer satisfaction, monitor your benchmarking, monitor your internal improvements. Again, it'll automatically notify you of customers at risk. As well as that, if we detect positive feedback, we'll start gathering some testimonials for you and allow your clients to share those on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn and you could also collect those for using your proposals and things like that. We're also just offering, if you're interested, special for this webinar. If you are interested in using Client Heartbeat, feel free to sign up and then email Ross. Ross is our marketing manager, and if we get an email from you after this webinar before the end of the month, we'll basically give you a 30% discount on Client Heartbeat for the life of the use of the product. So if you are interested, feel free to have a chat. Thanks very much, and if there's any questions, more than happy to kind of go through and try to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks a lot there, Gordon. So yeah, we've got some questions starting to kind of pile in here. I'm going to go ahead and say this is our MSP Business Management website. Wanted to send that around. This is where the webinar will be, hopefully on Friday. You'll get a meeting. Watch your email inbox for a message from the GoToMeeting software that'll have that address there. Okay, got some questions now for you, sir. Let me start out with one here from Joe. Joe was wondering about what do you think about the idea of firing clients, maybe like a troublesome client? What are your thoughts on that?
If you're asking that, I would say that you're probably in the right frame of mind, as long as it's definitely lose-lose. So I'm a firm believer in actually firing clients that it's clear that they're a lose-lose client. Sometimes the way that you can approach that is increase the cost of the service agreement to cover the increasing demands of the client. But if you know that the client's just not going to go for that, or they're problematic in other ways, definitely. I think it's more about the opportunity cost of that time and that energy, particularly energy that you spend on dealing with that client, can be redirected in heaps of way more productive places. Doing great things for your clients that actually love you, and creating advocates out of those clients. So I think, like I was saying before, I probably work directly with maybe 15, 20 MSPs, and I would say that basically all of them would say that any time that they've fired a client, it's been pretty positive. I haven't heard any feedback otherwise that it actually was the wrong decision to fire that client. So I think in your heart you kind of know, but some people just maybe it's difficult. I know it's difficult. You think about the lost revenue and you kind of go, oh, geez, that $3,000 or $4,000 a month or whatever, it's going to be worth keeping. But the truth is, it's not in most cases anyway.
Great. Yeah, I was trying to look for a link on the MSP site, but yeah, that kind of ties into that Net Promoter Score. You familiar with that, Gordon?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Okay, no, that's okay. Net Promoter is basically a single score, and it's based on one question. So it's how likely are you to recommend us to clients? And based on the score that they give you from 1 to 10, there's a formula that you use to come up with like a number. Now that's actually built also into Client Heartbeat. The reason why Net Promoter may not be as effective as asking the 4 questions specifically is because once you've got the number, you don't really know how to affect the number. So maybe you've got good attention to detail, but you're just slow. You're just delivering bad response times. The number's not going to tell you that. So that's why we recommend you ask the 4 questions, and it'll give you much more insight into directly where you need to put your energy. But Net Promoter as an overall thing, I think it's a fantastic idea, good concept, definitely.
Excellent. Yeah, Jenny wanted to give you the thumbs up on that, what you've been saying there about losing clients that cause you troubles. And also she was asking about tying how exactly, I guess kind of more the specifics of how Client Heartbeat ties into RMM software. I mean, do you have to set up an integration or what have you?
Yeah, sure. So it doesn't tie into RMM, it ties only into PSA tools. So if you're running like a ConnectWise and AutoTask, I think it does Salesforce as well, it's just the synchronizing of the client information. So it's very easy to set up if you're actually running, say, ConnectWise. You just basically, there's an external services thing. You just plug in your ConnectWise details. You use the ConnectWise. You've got to create a ConnectWise integrator login, which people that use ConnectWise will be familiar with. And then it basically just syncs the data across. So all we're doing at the moment is just making it easy for you to pull the client data out. But you can just as easily do that, export it to CSV and then import it into Client Heartbeat or SurveyMonkey or whatever. If you've got a small, customer list, you can definitely do that. At this stage, it doesn't integrate with any RMM.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense there. On that kind of same subject, Scott, not me, Scott, but another Scott was asking about other PSA tools you might be integrating with in the future, such as Affinity Live.
Look, at this stage, I mean, we've got a list of integrations. Infinity Live, I'm not actually familiar with, but I'll have a bit of a look. I mean, we've got idea to integrate into Tigerpaw, and we're always doing integrations. But if you want to email me, I can definitely keep you on the list. And when that does happen, if we need a guinea pig or whatever, and you're interested, we can give you the system for free and that you guinea pig it and try it out or whatever. So yeah, feel free to email me if it's something that you're interested in.
Okay, and that's Gordon. Want your email address again? I'll put it in the file for everybody.
Sure, just Gordon@clientheartbeat.com.
Okay, that's for there you go, everybody. Okay, Heather is asking about, okay, this is kind of a proactive strategy. She's asking, will this work for clients you've already lost? Do you think you can get them back with this method?
I think that if they're already lost, it's probably a lost cause. This is only speaking from personal experience now. I don't have any, I haven't spoken to any of our MSP clients about it specifically, but my personal opinion is if it's already gotten to that point, it's very difficult to rekindle a relationship, particularly if people, have made that, company directors and things like that are pretty, generally when they make a decision, they kind of stick to it. It's going to be very difficult for you to try to sway someone's decision making after they've already made the decision that they're looking to leave, they're wanting to leave, or they already have left particularly. I think in that situation, it's probably best to just end things amicably with the client, do everything right. It's really always disappointing when you're the one kind of taking over, and then the incumbent is just being silly about things, withholding information or just being nasty about it. I think the best thing you can do is just be dignified and do that transition to the best of your ability, and then look, if they stuff up, there's no reason why you couldn't touch base with a client, just see how things are going. I know that that's happened quite regularly as clients will come back. They'll look for a better price and then they'll come back because the service isn't there. So I think probably its strategy changes a little bit, but what I would recommend is you just, you do the honourable thing with the handover, and then you just keep in touch with the client. If it's a client that you're interested in continuing a relationship with, I'm sure that they will appreciate that. And for the effort, I think it's probably worth it.
Excellent. Okay, well, Gordon, looks like we've kind of plowed through all the questions there. And we are almost out of time. So, any last closing words on your end there?
No. Good luck, everyone, with your customer initiatives 2014. I hope this has helped improve your businesses.
All right, well, thank you for being here with us, Gordon. You can reach him at gordon@clientheartbeat.com. And you guys have a free trial, right? You went over that in the presentation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do. I don't think I did. We have a free trial. If you want to trial it out, feel free. It's a 21-day free trial. You can get started with the system. I'm more than happy to help or discuss any setup issues. You can feel free to email myself or Ross. We'd be more than happy to kind of work with you to get things up and running.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Gordon. And MSP Business Management is the website again. My name is Scott Kalanico. That's just MSP marketing tips and tricks, just kind of some strategies to help you run your business. We update new articles on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. We have a retro computer fun day, so that can be kind of cool. We're on the Twitter and we're on the Facebooks too, so MSPBusinessManagement.com is where you can find us. Thanks again, Gordon. Thanks for attending, everyone. Goodbye.